Alright, so coming off of the previous chapter, we saw that Gojo versus Sukuna was being set up for a later date, which was going to be Christmas Eve. And we assumed that there was going to be a time skip, and that's exactly what's happening in this chapter. And it's faster than what some of us thought. And when I went over the spoilers initially, I thought maybe Gege was speed running this, but now that I fully read the chapter, I don't think he is, or at least I'll say I have more hope that he isn't, because it seems like there's a lot more that still needs to be fleshed out that he necessarily doesn't intend to speed run. But anyway, this chapter opens up with us seeing Urarame giving the 4 of 5 final fingers to Sukuna. And just in my opinion, this is a little anticlimactic, at least kind of, because we had no idea where they were, and it was kind of set up that, I don't know, there was going to be something special about them. But no, Urarame just found them, I guess. And then Sukuna, of course, consumes them, meaning that now he has 19 fingers, one away from being complete. And the last time that he clashed with Gojo, he only had 15. You know, still the same amount coming off of the big Shibuya incident. So Sukuna will be, of course, stronger than what Gojo initially thought that he was going to be. Although I don't think that's going to deter him too much in that fight, but we'll talk about that later. But Sukuna points out that the final finger is probably with Gojo himself. He held it as a contingency so that Yuji wouldn't be executed, of course, which is like a very heartfelt moment, and I really like that. It shows, of course, how much Gojo cares about Yuji, as we knew immediately from the beginning of the series. But I suppose this also further sets up Gojo's inevitable defeat, right? I mean, I don't want Gojo to be defeated or to die, but we speculated that this is very likely, and I think this is also setting it up for sure now, because Sukuna has to become complete. It's been established since the beginning of the series, so that's like a hardcore Chekhov's gun there, and it seems like the only way for that to happen is for Sukuna to defeat Gojo and then get the final finger so that he can become 20 finger full power Sukuna. But then Sukuna says that he can compensate for 1 digit, meaning that, 19 fingers is enough, implying if he eats his mummified corpse. I mean, there is another translation that straight up says this, but it's more so implied in the official Viz translation, as we see him holding up the head of his mummified corpse. And there's definitely some alas poor Yorick stuff going on here, but I don't think it's as straightforward of a narrative as you think it would be with that stuff, but that's neither here nor there. He says, haha, mummification. Did Kenjaku, or rather Tengen, do this ironically? And that's really interesting. It seems like maybe Sukuna didn't necessarily become a mummy himself. Maybe they did this after the fact. Like they mummified Sukuna's body after he had transferred to become cursed objects in his fingers. Because we still hardly know much about the Heian era stuff, although I assume in the next couple chapters, hopefully that will be expanded upon greatly. Like in my opinion, we need like 4 or 5 chapters just dedicated to a Heian era flashback, like One Piece style, but I'm not really sure if Gege is going to do that at this point, but I hope he does. But it fully seems like Sukuna is like straight up eating his head here, the mummy head. So I guess that's going to give him a little bit of a power up as well. This could also go back to what we talked about before with Yuji possibly eating the other Curse Womb death paintings, which were supplied to him allegedly by Choso. But we cut over to Kenjaku, and he's talking to the Gogane, and it turns out that 19 days have passed, of course, since they had last updated. And we found out that one of the rules, of course, in the culling game is that if you don't kill anyone or gain any points or whatever in 19 days, then you will be subject to curse technique removal, which will kill you essentially if you're a sorcerer. And we found out that 61 people have died, and Kenjaku assumes it's like, oh, because they didn't want to kill or be killed. And he's like, no, I doubt the reasons were so instinctual. And then he goes on to, I guess, assume that they just were living in denial about it. But first, guys, let's talk about GamerSup's new flavor launch, and it's Brand Risk by Pay Money Wubby. And they are not lying. This is not only a brand risk to GamerSups, but also a monetization risk to me. I can't even fully show you what this looks like because it is so risque. I mean, you could find out what it looks like easily by checking the link in the description. Also use code BIGZ there for 10% off your purchase. You're also going to be helping me out. But Brand Risk is, like I said, new flavor with both mango and peach. It comes in both caffeine and caffeine free. Both are going to give you that good focus and energy that you need. One without the jitters or the super powerful caffeine effect, of course. Again, you can get Brand Risk by clicking the link in the description, and make sure you use code BIGZ as well for 10% off. Thanks, guys. The people of this country believes reality is stable, so they just just, I don't know, were content with just dying or just living in delusion about it. I don't know. Maybe this could be some kind of gege commentary on Japanese society, IRL, but that's neither here nor there. He also says that he despises people who never know the feeling of approaching their ideals step by step. I'm talking to you, Tengen. Of course, we don't fully understand what this means, but I assume it has something to do with the deals that Tengen set up or didn't set up with Kenjaku back in the day. Maybe Kenjaku was like in love with Tengen because it's implied that Tengen was like a woman. I don't know, but Tengen is like one of the big three ambiguous characters in this series. It's like Sukuna, Kenjaku, and Tengen. There's all this like non-conversation about them, Gege constantly talking around what the truth is and never really letting us know. But we cut back to Gojo with Shoko and Ichiji, and he's like, yeah, it's just the three of us now, right? Referring to Nanami dying, which he wasn't aware of because it happened after he was sealed in the Shibuya arc. He also tells Ichiji that he still has a big job to do, which could be anything. Ichiji is an auxiliary manager, so he's mainly in control of the curtains and transportation and stuff like that, and I guess moderating the teams. But this could be something to do with the curtain that he can manipulate, or maybe him being a pawn in manipulating the rules of the culling game, kind of like what he was before with Sumiki. Then Shoko says that Ino has something to say about Nanami, and then we see Ino come in. I don't even remember the last time we saw Ino. It's been a very long time, and it looks like he still hasn't recovered from his fight with reincarnated Toji. Like back in chapter 97, after Toji had been resurrected by Ogami using her seance curse technique, Ino like immediately jobbed to Toji here, just to establish how much of a beast he was, of course, and he just got lit up on the right side of his face. And he's showing us here that he still hasn't healed from that. And I don't know, maybe just enough time hasn't passed, or it could be giving us insight into what he is going to say about Nanami, because, you know, we know that Nanami was killed by Mahito, but maybe it didn't end there. Maybe Ino can do something to, I don't know, not necessarily bring Nanami back, but I don't know. I honestly don't know what this means. Please let me know in the comments if you think you know what Ino was going to say. Then we cut over to Mei, and she's saying that she's essentially going to make like this live stream for betting on Sukuna versus Gojo. And this is a little off-putting at first because it's like, is there really going to be a big spectacle about this in the world? But, you know, she does say that since, you know, the end of the Shibuya arc, when essentially Jujutsu was made public to the world, quote-unquote laws were revised. So I guess it's okay now, because she says before when she was doing Jujutsu betting, it was in a similar way that we saw Hikari doing it. Basically underworld arenas and whatnot, but now things have changed and she could just, I don't know, have people bet on this fight and also live stream it. And you're thinking like, how is she going to live stream it? I assume with her curse technique, which is like blackbird manipulation, where she can put her cursed energy into like crows and whatnot, you know, buff them, manipulate them, but also can see through them. So I guess she can also use her ability to have the crows act as cameras, because she says, I don't know if I've ever been so grateful to have this ability. And then Yui's like, hey big sis, let's fatten up the crows with this, and he has like crow feed. In the Viz translation it says ESA here on the bag, but in another translation it says feed, and I thought that was like a nice little double entendre. It is like food feed for the crows, but it also could be the crow feed, you know, like live, like the feed from like a live stream or something coming from the crows. But then we find out that they're sitting in the same room as Yuji and Kusakabe training, and something really interesting is happening here, because we see Yuji speaking to Kusakabe saying, master it already, Itadori, and then Kusakabe's like, os, you know, like the Japanese like hype up thing phrase, and you're like wondering like, wait, why are they speaking this way? And I guess we're led to believe that Yuji has swapped bodies with Kusakabe, and it's like, wait, how is he doing this? Well, it's not fully explained, because this is the only scene we're seeing of this happen in this chapter. So I guess this could go back to chapter 220, where Yuji said that Ieri said, I am now like a cursed object steeped in his cursed energy, Sukuna's. And then after that, we saw Choso gave Yuji this book that Tsukumo had of her research on souls. So I guess this is all tying together here, and maybe Yuji with this knowledge, now has the ability to do what Sukuna was doing. We saw that he like transferred his, I guess, soul to like his pinky, then snapped it off and force fed it to Megumi. That's how he took over his body. Now, I don't know if this necessarily is Sukuna's like innate technique, and this is Yuji now inheriting it, as, you know, Gojo foreshadowed way back early on in the series. I would like to think that Sukuna's innate technique is Malevolent Shrine or whatever, but it could be this too. I don't know, but regardless, Yuji now seemingly has this ability to swap bodies, and I'm sure this is going to play into how Megumi can be saved, and I really hope he does, although I think a lot of us have already accepted the fact that he's going to die, but there could be a twist here, maybe he doesn't. But like I said, it seems like this is Yuji's new ability to forcefully swap bodies, and hey, maybe he can even do this to Gojo. I don't necessarily know why that would be advantageous, because Gojo would obviously be the best pilot for Gojo rather than Yuji, but you know, maybe something happens and Gojo dies or something, and then Yuji gets in his body or something. I don't know, but this is definitely going to come back into play. Yuji is going to swap bodies with someone, maybe even Sukuna, like he just takes over Sukuna's body. Like I'm not even just Megumi, but just like full power 20-fingered Sukuna, if it comes to that point, which I very likely think it will. Then we see Okotsu meet up with Inumaki, and they're kind of just clearing up things because they really haven't had this time in the manga to talk. Basically, Okotsu saying that like, hey, everything's cool, you know, we know that Sukuna was the one that took out your arm, and I purposely told the higher ups that I would assassinate him so that they would allow me to do it. You know, everything that happened back in like chapter 137 to like 141. Then we just skip straight to December 24th, which is the predetermined date for Gojo to take on Sukuna. And we see Kenjaku talking to Urarame and Sukuna, and he's like, while you're fighting Satoru Gojo, I'll pick off culling game players. So it's like, who are the rest of the players that Kenjaku could possibly be picking off here? Well, you know, there's some that aren't with the big group here, like that samurai and that sumo guy who helped speedrun Maki's power up and character development. I'm sure we're going to see them get taken out by Kenjaku possibly. And then there's possibly even more culling game participants that we haven't seen yet. He also points out, you know, as we talked about in the previous review, that he was purposely sticking with Sukuna because Gojo would have instantly killed him, and he's fully aware of it. But then he also says something really interesting. It's like, if Satoru Gojo loses, the rest of Jujutsu Kaisen's main fighting force, including Okotsu, will be busy with you two today. Their only chance to defeat Sukuna would be immediately after he's fought Gojo. And we see Maki, Okotsu, and Akari, which is like Kenjaku power scaling them as to being the three strongest aside from Gojo, which is pretty much true. And like I said, this is also foreshadowing that Gojo is going to lose. But even this trio of powerhouses still have no chance against Sukuna, in my opinion. I mean, 19 fingers probably, but 20 fingers, pretty much no one has a chance aside from Yuji and whatever final arc power-up he's going to get, I guess. And then Kenjaku says, which will leave me free to do as I please. Like, there's still a few things that Kenjaku has to do. We know that his ultimate goal, or at least what he has told the audience, is that he wants to make that big Uzumaki monster. So yeah, he still kind of has to go around and do that. I think that has something to do with Sukuna's endgame as well. But I don't know why, but I feel like he wants Sukuna to fight that thing. And then Winter becomes like the ultimate life form, I guess. Or I don't know, it kind of seems like that's what Kenjaku wants, but then again, he has lied before, so who really knows? Then we see Gojo finally coming down to meet up with the rest of the group, and he looks serious, but he's also with Gaku Ganji for some reason. We have no idea why. We don't know what had happened. There was like a major time skip, as we said. There's a lot of stuff unaccounted for here that I hope Gege decides to touch on later, but it's odd that Gojo would be with Gaku Ganji here, because we saw Gaku Ganji straight up killed Masamichi, or at least it was implied that he did. There was a skip in that chapter as well. But I suppose they ironed things out, or maybe Gaku Ganji isn't entirely the bad guy that we thought. I mean, we knew that he wasn't. He was kind of just following orders, but maybe there's more to it than that. But Gojo looks very serious here. Maybe the most serious he's looked since the Hidden Inventory arc. And it goes to show that even someone as confident and otherworldly powerful as he is still somewhat worried about this. 19-Finger Sukuna is by far the strongest opponent that Gojo has ever faced in his life. Like, so powerful that maybe he's not even sure if he can just win this one cleanly. Or at least that's what I'm taking away from this sequence. And then Yuji says, Sensei, your curse technique's in the way, you know, limitless, not being able to touch him. And Gojo takes it down so that everyone could slap him on the back. This is like a pre-fight ritual, or also like a martial arts thing where everybody like slaps some guy on the back to hype them up, kind of. It's also a show of like camaraderie. Some other people have brought this to my attention that maybe this is Yuji like using his ability to swap with Gojo. And I mean, I guess that's a possibility, but like, why would they do that? Or is it like a way to trick Sukuna? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a possibility. Maybe put Yuji inside of Gojo's body so that when Gojo gets close to Sukuna, then he can then swap to Sukuna's body. But then what would happen to Sukuna? Would Sukuna go inside of Gojo? Or would Sukuna just be suppressed at that point, the way that he suppressed Megumi? So then would they both be suppressed? Like Gojo and Megumi both suppressed in the spiritual depths of their soul or whatever? I mean, it is a possibility. I don't know. Or maybe this was just a way to make Gojo come out of his seriousness and lighten him up a little bit. I don't know. You could take away from this sequence what you will. Anything is really on the table at this point. Also, I want to point out the group of onlookers here. Higuruma is there. I've got a lot of high hopes for Higuruma. Really like him, and I wish he had more time in this series, but it doesn't really seem like he will at this point. He will have his big moment, which I think will happen with Deadly Sentencing, his domain expansion, which puts you on trial. That has to come back into play, and I would love to see it being used on Kenjaku, who has 1,000 years of war crimes under him. And then the chapter ends with Gojo saying, yeah, I got this, and we see Sukuna getting ready too. So it looks like we're heading into the big main pay-per-view fight here with Gojo versus Sukuna. Maybe in the next chapter. I hope not. I would like to see this stretched out a little more, but you know, if we go into it and it sets up a much longer part of the series, that's fine too. But let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments, guys, and if you liked the video, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.